If you guys could probably come around. If you want to come around.
Oh, thanks, Jamie. Hopefully everybody got a copy of the complaint. Okay, good.
Did everybody get one? Who's going to tell me when we're ready?
Ready.
Well, listen, my name is Mel Hewitt. I'm from Atlanta, and I'm one of the lawyers representing the families of a number of the victims that were killed last April 15th at the FedEx ground facility off Maryville Road. I appreciate everybody being here. We do have a couple of members of the family here that we're representing. They all couldn't be here today. The suit was filed within the last maybe couple hours against FedEx, the parent company, 3 of its operating companies, including the FedEx ground package operating company, and 2 of the other operating companies that were involved in one way or another in the security at that FedEx and a number of other FedEx ground facilities. The suit has also named Securitas, which is, if it's not the largest, it's one of the largest private security contractors in the world. I think Dan, I'm working with Dan Chamberlain of Cohen Malad on this. Dan's going to introduce the family members.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mel. My name is Dan Chamberlain from Cohen & Malad. We're an Indianapolis-based but nationally recognized law firm. It is our pleasure to represent these folks in a just devastatingly horrible situation that was preventable. Not only preventable, but these types of situations cannot continue in the United States, let alone in the state of Indiana. This is one of the worst mass shootings and frankly unnecessary. To my right is Gary Johal. He's going to give a quick statement, and so is Matt Alexander, going to give a quick statement about their losses in this matter.
Hi, my name is Gary Johal, and I'm the youngest son of Amarji Johal. Today, just want to let you guys know what my mother meant to me. She was the world for us all, the whole family. She was one of the strongest pillars of the family that brought the whole family together. The most selfless person that you could ever meet. I guess if you want me to say, compared to anybody, the most selfless person you could ever meet that can be compared to God. If you guys know what God is like, then you know what my mother's like. Losing her is one of the biggest devastations in our life. I'm still trying to process the whole situation. The only thing I keep processing is the fact that this whole situation was preventable. Multiple parties that need to be held accountable, and we want to see them held accountable so this doesn't happen again, especially with a corporation that has been through this multiple times, and it doesn't seem like they care. They still don't care. So we need some justice. We need to see that this doesn't happen again.
I should thank you, Gary. I should also explain that this is not the first shooting at FedEx. Mr. Hewitt is from Atlanta, Georgia, and Mel has prosecuted the claims against FedEx for another mass shooting. If you could just explain a little bit about what that case was all about.
Fortunately, no one was killed in the Kennesaw mass shooting several years ago, and I had the privilege of representing several of the people who were shot there. That was also another FedEx ground package facility.
So FedEx has been put on notice that, frankly, this is something that is preventable and, frankly, should never have ever occurred. And had they followed their own policies and procedures, this would never have occurred. Next up is Matt Alexander. His daughter was killed in the shooting. And Matt, if you could just say a little bit about what you're doing.
This has been extremely traumatic for my entire family, especially for Carly's brothers and younger sister. The fact that this even took place is a detrimental blow to her friends, her family. It's an ongoing process for me to trying to comprehend, because no one should ever have to bury their child. But if something can be done to even slightly increase the procedures and the policies, and not just FedEx but everywhere else, to let people know that this can't happen again, and as a way to prevent any other family, any other person from going through this senseless tragedy, that would be a definite plus in everybody's book.
Thanks, Matt.
Well, I think everybody has a copy of the suit. I think we're local, so everybody understands what happened last April. It's our position. This was a preventable tragedy with 8 people killed and 5 injured. We've all got a copy of the complaint. Rather than me go through things that you don't necessarily care about, if you have any questions, Dan or I would be happy to try to answer any questions that you folks might have that you want to ask.
Yeah, I had a question. What should FedEx have had in place at the time that this happened? Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I don't want to go into too much of our strategy with the case, but obviously there wasn't enough in place. This is not the first FedEx incident. This is not the first mass shooting incident. A company like FedEx can't say, oh, gee, we didn't know these things were going to happen. I understand some of the media that's covered this incident in the past have talked to former employees and employees that said, hey, we've told FedEx about being uncomfortable. And when I'm saying FedEx, FedEx Ground is the company where all these folks worked at. And there are a number of, as you know, FedEx entities. So not all FedEx entities are involved. But it involves the details. We haven't got all the details because law enforcement has not complied with our requests for all the records. We will be getting all the records. In fact, that's part of the complaint that we've said we would like to have explained more, but can't because we've not been given access to everything that law enforcement has. So, but I can't tell you exactly. I mean, I spent 18 years in the security business prior to starting representing victims as a lawyer. There's a lot of things that should have been done, not only by FedEx, but by Securitas. Anybody else?
Mr. Hewitt, can you explain the difference between, if there is any difference between the lawsuit that happened in Georgia compared to this lawsuit? Is there anything you learned from there that you're taking to this lawsuit? Are there similarities, differences, things of that nature?
Like in all the lawsuits in Georgia were settled. Some things are subject to confidentiality that I just can't go into. Were there some things that I learned there? Certainly. And yes, I know how they operate, and that's not a commentary whether that was good or bad. I just know who does what within the organization. So yeah, you learn a lot of things. There, thankfully, nobody was killed. There were, I believe, 5 or 6 people that were in fact shot. The similarity is, as is the similarity in a lot of these active shooter mass shooting events, the former employee. Disgruntled or not, a former employee that came to the facility actually entered twice. It was his second entry to the facility where he started shooting.
Will you be using that case in your argument, this case, trying to prove that they knew something this would happen?
Well, it's clear FedEx knew that there was a shooting at Kennesaw. So I don't think they're going to deny that. I mean, and look, that's their lawyer's job, is to defend them. My job is to prosecute the case, what we think are the facts of the case, and what the negligence involved in the different entities were. And certainly it's FedEx's job to say, oh, no, it's not our fault. If we didn't believe sincerely in this case and the flaws in what happened that led to this, what we consider to be a clearly preventable tragedy, we wouldn't be here.
Were all of the victims given the opportunity to join this suit?
Well, I don't know. If you're asking if we chased an ambulance, the answer is no. We didn't seek out anyone. We were sought out and talked to those people. We did not go contact people that didn't contact us. Does that answer your question?
To a certain degree.
Okay.
So, Matt, perhaps you can help enlighten us then. As fellow victims' families, if I can put it that way, you guys found each other and rallied together to try to do something about this?
A separate party had reached out to me, and I had contacted Mel, and just kind of went from there. As far as the parameters and specificities of the whole incident at large, I'm not able to speak on that yet. So,
Are you planning to have more names added? Are you expecting that?
I mean,
And at this point, I think the answer is, if people want to join the lawsuit, they're invited to join with us and work together. It just makes sense.
So obviously FedEx wasn't, the only party involved in this. We talk about people who knew of things before this happened, whether you're talking about the FBI, law enforcement, different parties. Could we expect additional lawsuits to come out of the work?
is what you're talking about, the red flag law?
It doesn't have to be necessarily the red flag law, but I don't know if there were specific individuals.
There will not be a lawsuit that will be brought against the city of Indianapolis, Marion County, or the prosecutor's office. That simply will not happen.
By us. We don't know what anybody else
Somebody
is
else
gonna
may do it, but we are not going to do that.
Ours is limited to the FedEx operating companies, the parent corporation, and Securitas at this time. But we have no intention of filing any governmental type lawsuit.
It's interesting. One of the issues that we're going to see in the case is that FedEx expects and understood that there could be crime at their premises, and frankly, they issued name badges, which this person was no longer an employee at FedEx, and they had the name badge, and the name badge specifically says there could be crimes on the property. So it's not that they did not know that this was this was a risk, and frankly, just ignored it. So from our perspective, I don't think there's any question that FedEx is just 100% responsible for all of this preventable loss.
Just for both families, as we near the 1 year mark, how are both of you feeling today sitting here filing this lawsuit?
As we felt on the day that we lost our loved ones. It hurts. It's painful. It sucks that we have to go through this when this whole incident was 100% preventable. Even people that aren't in the security field knows that they should have been prevented. But as far as the loss, it's still the same, still hurts the same, still can't move forward. Life has just been going down. My mother was everything to me, and I can't see myself moving forward at this moment, at least without the justice that we deserve. All the families that, the justice that all the families deserve.
And just to follow up a little bit on what Gary said, there is a possibility, there are no governmental entities that we intend to deal with at all. That doesn't mean that other plaintiffs might not join us, because they might. And might there be other entities, corporate entities that might get involved? I don't know that yet. So as soon as we get into the case, as in any lawsuit, you're apt to see parties added, parties dropped, when everybody finds out more about everything that went on.
Just Just a question for Matt or Gary or anyone else. Do you guys have any plans on just honoring your loved ones this week? Anything special for
Just
the family?
doing the best I can to remind people of how much Carly meant to her friends and family and how much she impacted people, because she was a kind and giving person, as I'm sure Gary's mother was. And to all the victims out there, again, this should not have happened, but there are at least 8 different lights that have gone out in this world needlessly. And that could have been prevented, so we want to make sure that that doesn't happen to anybody else. But personally, this is a never-ending struggle. This will not stop. I will always remember her on her birthday, which just passed, this past February. And the anniversary date of this coming up is no easy situation to deal with either.
Carrie, do you feel qualified at all to speak about the impact on the Sikh community and maybe the connection you've made, unfortunately, with these other families that lost someone? And do you have any ongoing concern that there might have been a targeted hate crime here at all?
We don't believe it was a targeted hate crime, because obviously there's 4 non-Sikh members that passed away that day, and 4 Sikh members that were killed that day. So, I mean, if you look at those details, if anybody is sitting there saying this was a hate crime, I'd say they'd be wrong. But to extent, he must have some kind of hate in his heart. Whether if it was targeted toward a certain group, I wouldn't say that. But obviously there was some kind of hate in his heart that made him go out there and commit this heinous crime. Like, it shouldn't have happened.
You also have to understand that this is a major tragedy with 8 lives taken that could have been worse. There were 5 more people that were injured in this. So what happened is horrible, but it could have even been worse. There's other lives been affected by being shot or injured in this incident, and an entirely it's our position, entirely preventable, mitigatable incident.
We know that there was a large Sikh workforce there, and that many people were related or certainly friends.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how that's been impacted long term? If you had family members or friends leave the facility or go back to work there?
Yes, we have. There are some friends and families that haven't been able to go back to work. Some that did end up shifting to different locations because they couldn't go back to that location, as they felt unsafe because there was no security there. All their doors were wide open for anybody to walk in, as he did with his guns. So, being a large corporation, you should have all your security measures covered, all your security angles covered, especially for somebody that's coming in causing a havoc and then wants to go back out to get his whatever, and you know he's causing a havoc and you still don't pay any attention to him. It just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't add up.
I'm curious if you know, for the ones who transferred in different locations that are still working within FedEx, if they received any kind of note, support from the company, from managers, just anything?
I think it's just like the bare minimum that they're required by law. You know, rules or regulations, whatever you want to call it, is the support that they've been providing. Like, that's about it.
Obviously, this lawsuit delves into a lot of, different elements. How long has this been in the works for all of you? These conversations, I'm sure, have been ongoing for some time and really carefully thought out. And how long has this been sort of a conversation before this was brought forth today, brought forth this week? I know it's obviously timely to everything going on with the anniversary this week. I'm just curious on that part of this.
You mean how long have the lawyers been working on it?
Yeah, lawyers, families, these
Several months?
conversations been going on.
We've been information gathering for several months now.
It's been difficult. It's been very, very difficult, trying to get all the information from the feds and locals. We have to file the lawsuit so that we can get the information that we need to pursue this case further. But we've been working on it for several months. But they've been living it for a year.
Yeah.
So
Since day one. Which I don't understand is, like, why do they even have issues sharing the information that we're entitled to?
Follow up on Gary's question, can you guys answer that? Like, why it's been
we've done open records requests and they've been denied.
What was the reasoning you got back?
Well, frankly, there is no reason. They just ignored it, basically, ignored the Freedom of Information requests. And so if they don't want to cooperate, we have to do something to get cooperation, and this is cooperation.
You'll see, it's in the complaint that we've contacted law enforcement. We want the photographs, we want the interviews, we do have some body cam coverage, we do have some media coverage. I mean, half of the police department and half the media in town were out there that night, but that's post what happened. We want to see what happened. We've been denied access to that. I don't know why. I mean, but we will be asking a federal judge to get us access to all that information.
You talk here in the complaint about how the shooter walked up, demanded to see a manager of the facility. He was banging on the door. What was the source for that information?
We've talked to several of the victims that have gotten that, who were there that night, who talked to not only FedEx people, but police department people, and with one another. This is based on all the information we've been able to gather.
And some of that information, if you don't mind, I'd like to, we got some of that information directly from the detective that was working on the case. He is the one that provided us detailed information. Some of this is already in the file here, but we did get the majority of that information from the detective himself.
What would be justice? What do you seek in terms of justice here?
The justice for, personally, I know this is more maybe how Gary feels as well, the prevention of this happening in a future date at a future facility, whether it's FedEx or not. Because speaking as somebody who has worked personal security, who's been in the military, as National Guard member for going on 15 years now, there are several things that should have been put in place that were not, that are common sense things as far as security is concerned, that were just ignored, like not advisably listened to, or just blatantly just disregarded. And they're basically, I want something to be done to make sure that doesn't happen again.
So the shooter's dead. Like in a lot of these cases, he went and killed himself after his shooting spree. So there's no criminal case going on, but well, these days, any days, I'm a former law enforcement myself. Law enforcement can't be everywhere, and even smaller companies, there's a limit to what can be done. And all we're saying to the corporate communities, I guess, is, you know, you've got to do something that's reasonable. And based on the knowledge that's out there, just do something reasonable to make sure your employees are protected as best they can. We're not asking for fortresses to be built around places. We're just asking corporations to do, and you ask, what do we want out of the suit? Certainly. There's civil suits, yeah, they're all about money. But they're not only about money. They're about bringing awareness to what happens, why does it happen, and what can you do to mitigate it from happening.
I have a question sort of to follow up just on, you know, the support, if any, that your families have received this last year. I know FedEx launched that Victims Compensation Fund after all of this happened. Have your families received support from that after all of this happened? You know,
Well,
I know there was
Well,
Just one little correction.
sure.
FedEx did not initiate that. That was done as part of an adjunct from the National Center for Victims of Crime. They're the ones that roll that out. And yes, as I happen to be the chair of the National Center as well. So yes, that group did come in, and yes, FedEx did contribute to that, as did other members of the Indianapolis community to distribute what funds were made available through those contributions, so yes. But that was not initiated by FedEx.
Is it accurate that all of the victims you represent were killed in the parking lot and not in the building?
No.
No.
We don't know that.
Okay.
But we've asked. That's part of the information we've asked. What we do know, what we think we know, is that none of the people were actually on duty. They had either just come off shift, punched out and come off shift, or were in the parking lot ready to go on shift. But none of the victims that I know, I think Gary knows that his mother was shot inside the facility. But others believe their loved one was shot outside the facility in the parking area.
And then my daughter was waiting for a ride home.
So she was
Believe.
definitely outside.
I don't know if she was outside or inside or not. I know she was waiting for a ride home. I know she just got off work.
We just want to say thank you for coming today. It's a tragedy. It's a 1-year anniversary of a very, very bad thing, and we do appreciate your patience and coming here and seeing us. If we can answer any questions, my cards are in front. Mel's got his cards as well. We'd be happy to answer any questions moving forward. But we do thank you for your time today, so thank you.
Do you have any expectation on sort of the next legal process or when things start rolling at all?
Well, they have to file whatever motions they're going to file, and they're going to have to file an answer. That has to be we're in federal court, so there's a time limit, and there's a time that lawyers have to respond during that period and talk to one another, communicate. Then you have to get a scheduling order worked out, then discovery will take place. So it's a long
battle.
process.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I don't usually carry these, but if anybody wants to talk to me in Atlanta, or if they know anybody who wants to talk to me in Atlanta, here you go.
Mr. Hewitt, could you
Yes.
spell Gary's last name? Is it just spelled the same?
Gary's last name?
Yeah.
Okay, because in the complaint, you'll see it's Gurinder, but that's,
I just want to make sure.
yeah, Johal. And if you didn't get a copy of the complaint, we'll make sure you get one. Oh, you do? Okay, yeah.
I got one.
Hopefully, there's no typos in here.
And
Copy of the complaint.
Matt, two T's in your name?
I don't know,
Yes.
somebody walked in.
And I also wanted to send a heartfelt condolences out
Thanks.
to any of the victims who also lost their lives or were affected by this, because it's not just us.
And that's also caused some confusion. There was a Matthew Alexander that was killed.
Right.
Yeah.
I got
That's not
several
him.
phone calls.
Yeah.
And Matt, is Carly, we were talking about this before, we always thought Carly was spelled just K-A-R-L-I. Is it K-A-R-L-I-E?
No, it's K-A-R-L-I.
Okay, the complaint says K-A-R-L-I-E.
Yeah.
So, okay, perfect, just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
No,